We'll start with our big network exclusive this evening, where sources tell our sister channel Times Now that it appears PSU banks may actually be dragging their feet when it comes to filing criminal charges against Vijay Mallya, especially at a time when we know both the Enforcement Directorate and the Central Bureau investigation have been very keen that banks actually take that route. Let's in fact take it across to our colleague from Times Now, Navika Kumar, who's joining in, and our very own Supriya Srinath is here as well. Navika, first, do help us understand what this exclusive, news is that Times Now is privy to.
This, in my hand, are the minutes of the meeting held on 18th of May in Mumbai with the consortium of banks and the two investigating agencies, the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate. The Enforcement Directorate in this meeting actually requested all banks to go ahead and file cases against Vijay Mallya, because without those cases being filed, there's not much investigating agencies can do. Look at what these minutes of the meeting say as far as action points for banks are concerned. It says each bank is required to take up the issue of fraud in Kingfisher Airlines with their respective audit committees and get it ratified. That's something that's not even started by banks as of now. So if there was fraud, and if these banks knew that there was fraud, especially in the IDBI case, it has been proved by the investigations of the Enforcement Directorate, then why are the banks dragging their feet, not really registering that fraud, not really taking it to the investigating agencies? Also, as far as these points for the legal advisor Dua Associates is concerned, it says to examine whether a criminal complaint can be filed against Dr. Vijay Mallya and or United Breweries and Kingfisher Airlines for the following facts: cheating and intention to cheat dishonestly as evidenced by the banks, wrongful declaration of assets by Dr. Vijay Mallya, wrongfully disputing guarantee already given voluntary, and pledging of shares after giving an oral undertaking not to do so without obtaining permission from the lenders or the court. So all of that happening in the banks, but no criminal cases being filed. Look at also who was attending this meeting. The Enforcement Directorate took it upon itself to send its most senior people. Director Enforcement Karnail Singh and a joint director went and attended this meeting, and look who was attending this meeting from the bank side. Yes, there was B. Sriram, the MD of the State Bank of India, but the other people with him were a GM, a DGM, and then some assistant general managers. The Punjab National Bank actually fielded only a general manager and a deputy general manager. Corporation Bank, chief general manager and a deputy general manager, and some other banks just a senior manager like Jammu and Kashmir Bank. Now the question is, how seriously are public sector banks taking this entire issue of Vijay Mallya owing the banks over 9,000 crore and bringing the depositors' money back? That's the big question that is being raised by the minutes of this meeting that we have produced. And the question we are asking is that if the investigating agencies are still requesting banks to look at the fraud angle, then what were these banks doing all this while?
Supriya in on this as well. And Supriya, as Navika says, it is a 9,000 crore rupee question after all. And it seems, at least from this, that banks may have been sort of dragging their feet. There's a little bit of hesitance in this. What is it that banks are saying in their defense, if they have any at all?
The banks have been laxed in this. There is no denying that. Banks kept looking the other way when Vijay Mallya kept getting these loans and kept defaulting on them. So there is no denying the fact that public sector banks haven't really been the custodian of taxpayers' money like they should have been. There is no denying that. But in their own defense, right now at least, the banks are saying that there is a litigation that is on in the Supreme Court which is looking into this entire matter, and we do not want to comment on this. We've been chasing banks left, right and center for the last 2 days now, both SBI and PNB. They don't wish to talk on this matter on or off the record. I mean, that is how that is how wary they are right now. But there is no denying that banks haven't been the rightful custodian of taxpayers' money. I mean, look, forget about the numbers of 9,000 crore rupees. About 6,000 crore rupees worth of Vijay Mallya's personal assets lie in India. Why could those not be attached? The ED is only now moving on to this. You have somebody like a Karnail Singh who heads Enforcement Directorate to talk about the fact that they cannot take suo motu action unless the banks file a complaint. So there are some charges that the banks will have to pay we will have to pay heed to. And I think one of them is that have they been dragging their feet? Have they been a little soft on Vijay Mallya in this entire matter? Why is it that they haven't filed these complaints? In their own defense, the banks say there is a litigation on, there is a process by which we want to settle. And also, what we are officially picking up from the banks is that we don't want to just focus on penalizing Mallya, we want to recover our dues. And I think one of the reasons why they have been dragging their feet on this matter is perhaps that, but that really holds no logic, because if the man is going to be flying overseas and not even come to you for your hearings, you can do precious little with it. But that holds true for ED and CBI as well. He's really paid no heed to any of their notices. He's even told the Supreme Court he's going to appear at a later date. So Vijay Mallya is having a ball and the banks haven't been able to rein them in. If my director can tell me, do I have lawyers that I can go to and just understand the legal aspects of this case? What is it that the banks could have done or could not have done? I'm also given to understand we were going to be joined by former banking executives for their side of the story. Why is it that banks have not taken the criminal action so far? Do we have guests right now?
Actually do have Mr. Pradeep Chaudhary, Mr. H.P. Reena and Majid Memon, all three joining in. Let's kickstart that discussion with Mr. Pradeep Chaudhary. Of course, he's the former chairman of the State Bank of India. Mr. Chaudhary, you just heard an exclusive news break from Times Now, and it almost seems like the executive, the ED and the CBI were begging a consortium of banks to go ahead and file those criminal charges, and yet it seems that, PSU banks seem to be dragging their feet. Is that even a fair assessment of the situation, or would you sort of go out and defend the PSU bank's stance?
Firstly, I think Times Now and ET Now have become the counsel and the judge both at the same time. So, you are making allegations.
We're just putting the news out there.
Supriya Sinte has already concluded that the banks are dragging their feet. And secondly, why are you singling out only public sector banks? Even ICICI Bank was a lender to this Kingfisher. In fact, they started lending in a much bigger way. But you are selectively maligning the public sector bank and not going through the whole facts of the case.
No, sir, that's actually not at all, because it was a consortium of banks.
No, but why did you mention public sector banks only? If PNB was a part of the consortium, so was ICICI. So you should say it is banks. So it is, you have an agenda to prove.
Mr. Chaudhary, if I may come in, and I'm not singling out the public sector banks.
You mentioned public sector.
Mr. Chaudhary, if you please allow me the indulgence to come in, sir. I am not singling out the public sector banks. That's not our intention. Banking as a whole, including the private sector guys, have seemed to be dragging their feet on this. What explains the fact that banks are now checking if criminal complaint can be filed against Vijay Mallya? Why could this checking not have been done earlier?
No, it was done, but you need conclusive evidence. And we had entrusted this to a team of expert lawyers. You need a conclusive evidence, otherwise you can be charged with, infamy and blaming wrongly. But the banks went after the properties of Mr. Vijay Mallya. We went and filed a case in the DRT, and the DRT gave 6 hearings to Mr. Mallya and Kingfisher, whereas there is no provision for giving a hearing under Section 13(2). The order should have been passed, and the district magistrate gave 6 personal hearings, and on the 7th hearing, she went for a maternity leave. So this is how the legal process is also functioning. And I do not know, I do not agree that ED cannot initiate suo motu. There have been umpteen cases where CBI has initiated suo motu case against the bank. I think it's very strange that my house has been robbed and I am being blamed that, why did you allow the robbery to happen? You are not going after the culprit, you are not going after the thief, but you are going and blaming that the householder must have been negligent and he has allowed this to happen. But Supriya, please check your transcript. You mentioned only public.
I can't disagree with you there. And even though you think that we are acting as the judge and the complainant, I can't disagree with you there. And which is why my question is, do you believe at one level there is a disconnect of sorts between the investigative agencies like ED and CBI on one hand and the banks on the other?
Cases. And this case is already in the Supreme Court. And I do not think it is right for me to speak outside the Supreme Court. And if somebody thinks that the banks have been dragging their feet and they have not done enough, I think the case is being heard in the Supreme Court. It can be raised there. I do not think such a thing has been raised there.
Mr. H.P. Ranina, request you to come in on that with your legal perspective on this matter. It almost seems like the investigative agencies are not at the same page with the banks. They almost are begging the banks to act, which the banks are refusing to do. And I'm not singling out the public sector banks at all. That's the caveat we at ET now are putting out. It includes banking as a whole, the private lenders involved. What is your take on this matter? Is there a sense that you're getting that banks as a whole are perhaps a little wary of filing the complaints that they perhaps could have against Vijay Mallya?
Yes, I think the real reason is that they are wary because once the complaint is filed, then their own senior officers will also be subject to investigation. And I think that is where the catch lies. They know that many of them have given loans when they should never have given loans in the first instance. And therefore, when an investigation starts, it is the senior bank officials who will also be in very serious trouble. And they will have to justify as to why they give a loan to a company like Kingfisher, which has always been in a loss and which has never had any potential. And yet they kept on giving loans and valuing assets like their brand name and goodwill, which had really no value. And they gave assets on the basis of such type of dubious securities. So that is, I think, one of the reasons why the banks have been slow, whether it is the private sector banks or the public sector banks, but they themselves don't want to expose themselves.
I think Mr. Ranina is not fully informed. The loan was not given against the brand security. It was given against the receivables from the travel agents. So it would be much helpful and the discussion quality would improve if people make informed comments and not based on conjectures.
Well, some of the banks have given on the basis it may not be your bank.
So that's an important point that Mr. Chaudhary is bringing to the table.
That CBI, has investigated as per newspaper reports, but I do not think anything further has happened. So what are you questioning? Are you questioning the judgment to give the loans, or are you questioning the lack of, interest in pursuing the criminal aspect? So let us be very clear. What Mr. Ranina says that it was a bad credit decision. So, if that is there, I think that there is a different forum for this, and nothing precludes CBI and CVC to examine that aspect also.
I'm given to understand, I also have Mr. Mohandas Pai joining us, and I think both Mr. Chaudhary and Mr. Ranina are making important valid points here. Like Mr. Chaudhary is pointing out there, it was given on receivables, and that what is being questioned is really the big question. But I want to take it to Navika once to just get clarity on one matter. Navika, the story that we are putting out here is essentially that ED and CBI are almost begging banks to act. Could they not have acted on their own? Okay, I'm given to understand Navika is not with us, but Mr. Mohandas Pai is joining us on the phone line as well, and I'm given to understand Mr. Majid Memon is also with us. I'm going to go to both these gentlemen right now. Mohandas Pai, the story that we are putting out is that there seems to be a disconnect between what the investigative agencies want the banks to do and what they're actually doing. The sense that the investigative agencies are getting is that banks are being wary, they're dragging their feet in pursuing Vijay Mallya, in charging criminal complaints against him. Is that a sense you're getting as well?
Well, the banks want to settle the account and get their money back. I don't think they're interested in fighting cases for 10, 15 years. And if they fight cases, the person who files the complaint, the person will be called to give evidence and they'll be harassed, right? The court system works that way. So I think they want to settle, but they're scared to settle because our political leaders have gone and said every single penny will be brought back and all kind of stuff. So I think the best solution is the Supreme Court should step in, set up a court commissioner where the banks can go, Mallya can come, talk and settle and complete it. I think that's the best way to act. Hello.
That indeed is the best way to act, but this matter is also out in the public domain, and it's important to question India's banks here because they are custodians of public sector money. Mr. Majid Memon, you represent a lot of your clients here in New Delhi and you understand how New Delhi works. Just to understand from you, while Mallya is deposing his assets everywhere, how are banks even affording to look the other way?
See, first, I would most respectfully
Is
refer
Mr.
to
Memon
what...
with us?
Hello? Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
sir. Go ahead. Please go ahead, sir.
Yes. First, I would refer to what my friend Mr. Chaudhary
Go
has...
ahead, Mr. Memon.
Yeah, Mr. Chaudhary has made certain comments with highest respect to him. He took an offense that it is not just public sector banks, but even a private sector bank like Punjab National, etc., etc. I want to tell him one thing with respect to him. There is hardly any much difference between public sector banks and other banks because almost all the officials there are working in the same pattern, and our experience in this country throughout for years and years. I must tell you one example that if a poor man who goes for a bank loan for a house, small one-bedroom house, and goes for 10 lakh rupees loan from your bank, whether it is State Bank or any other bank, they would make him run for 100 times to the bank and make sure that more than adequate security is arranged so that even if there is a lapse of payment, repayment of one installment, you would even send bouncers and musclemen to just recover everything. Do you treat powerful people also like this? Now, in case of Vijay Mallya, you are saying that I am the aggrieved, my bank has been robbed, my house has been robbed, and therefore I am aggrieved. I would say, with respect to Mr. Chaudhary, that your house could be robbed because you kept your treasury open for powerful people. What kind of assurance and foolproof security was arranged when the loans were advanced promptly in thousands of crores of public money, tax money? And then you are now saying that we are doing our best to recover the money. What were you doing all the while for the past 2 years before Mallya fled from India? What steps? DRT you filed, the magistrate is on leave. These are all lame excuses. The magistrate gave 6 days, around 7 days, went to maternity leave. This is not the, a foolproof effort on the part of the people's money which is lost. And I'm afraid that all kinds of commissions are being paid to the officers. I'm sorry to say this, I'm not identifying any particular person, but our experience tells us that whether it is State Bank or any other bank, officers are conniving. The officers who have the authority to grant loan, etc., are also, I'm saying, making a statement with great responsibility.
You made your point, Mr. Memon, and I must come in here because I think some of the questions that you raised deserve a response from Mr. Chaudhary. And Mr. Chaudhary, if I may pose the same questions to you.
No, when did the public sector bank send musclemen to small borrowers? And private sector bank, let a small borrower who is trying to ply an auto, let him apply for a loan to a private sector bank. I think the watchman would not generally let him in. It is if so many thousands of autos are plying in streets, if so many hundreds of tractors are plying, if so many millions of farmers have got loans, you mean to say that they were all given loan because of bouncers? And these loans were never given? These people have never benefited? Yes, loans go bad. Even Air India, as a airline, went bust, and the Air India loan, of course, it is government owned. That is why it did not become an NPA. And there are umpteen examples of central government, public sector organization. In fact, I can name NAFED, National Agricultural Federation. This bank, this company has defaulted to the extent of 3,000 to 4,000 crores to banks. And Supriya, not the public sector banks alone, even private sector banks. Now, so this is the question that if public sector government companies also
Mr.
default,
Chaudhary, I must clarify to you, I'm not against the public sector banks. I think they're doing a good job.
Menon also mentioned. And you in
Absolutely.
your discourse,
Which brings me.
Maybe you don't realize it automatically flows in that public sector, they are custodian of public sector money. Yeah. You should say it is a custodian of public money. You please read your transcript.
Mr. Chaudhary, I must clarify here on national television. that I'm a big fan of public sector banks. I have all my accounts with them. I deal with them. My question, though, sir, is some of the points that you raised.
Yes, that is the legal process. And Mr. Menon, I think...
No, that is my initial response. I think you're reading me wrong there, and I will not allow you to do that, sir. You cannot force me to take a position that I haven't taken, Mr. Chaudhary. And my question really is that do you believe public sector... Do you believe, sir, public sector banks could have done a lot more in the last 2 years than they have on this particular Kingfisher Airline case? Mr. Chaudhary, answer my question. For the last 2 years...
No, I cannot answer this because this question is in Supreme Court.
So
if
you
I
do
say
concede
this,
that
it
a
would
lot
amount
more
to-
could have been done by the banking community. You do
I do not
concede
know.
that,
I
don't
do
you?
not know. You please ask the current management. I'm not in there for last 3 years. And if you think that they have been, negligent of their duties, go and tell the CBI, go and tell the ED, go and tell the Enforcement Directorate that they are not doing their job, they are getting paid salaries. And Mr. Menon, public sector bank officers do not get any commission. So before you make that kind of
I have
please get your
cases
facts
on
right.
my hand. I'm handling. There are criminal offences alleged against.
No, but why are you jumping? Well, you answer the commission part. You mentioned that officers got commission.
Yes,
Please prove.
they
When
are-
have the officers been paid commission in public sector?
They are sharing the booty. They are corrupt. I am sorry to say this, my
No,
dear.
I think that's totally wrong. That's totally wrong.
Number
That's
of
totally
officers
wrong. We
who
should
are
not make allegations. We should not make broad-based allegations.
There are
All right,
They could be in the private sector, public sector. Let us not blame.
I
the
am not.
public
I'm going to
sector for
step in, and I will not allow this to become a mudslinging match between the bankers on the show and the legal fraternity here. I'm not going to allow this to become a
You are being
mudslinging match.
partisan.
The
Why
only
did you
reason
stop Mr.
why we
Menon
put out this
when he
story is
said
because
that
it has
public
raised some
sector
very
bank
important
officers are getting
questions.
They are not.
It has also raised very important questions on the role of the banks, both public and private, and it has raised questions on what is the way forward and why are investigative agencies not acting suo moto? Can they actually act or not? But we've completely run out of time here. It's been a very heated exchange of arguments, and we appreciate that exchange to happen. But we wrap it up on this edition of News First. We hand it over to Tanya Bharadwaj for Smart Markets next.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.